Now we want to talk about mobile design strategy. After you know how to program, the next thing is we want to actually think about how we want to plan our mobile design. Yes, do people just sit down at the computer and start making apps or websites? Yes, they do. But they usually end up taking more time and they're not as well thought out if you don't take the time to plan it. You don't really know what you need to make until you've taken the time to really think about what you want to make. And then it's easy once you sit down at the computer because you know exactly what you want to do. So the first thing you want to do is create the use case. What is this and why would anybody want to use it? Who is your audience and target demographic? And what are their needs? And really the only way you can understand what their needs are is to ask them. Talk to people, find out what their problems are. What you think their problems are may not be the problem, and your solution to the problem may create other problems. You may not have the same exposure as somebody from a different background, and so you might learn something by talking to people who are going to be your target audience. And you should create ideal personas of users, and those are very detailed, where they talk about the different kinds of people who might be users of your product, down to their age, what they like to do, what kind of lifestyle they have. That will give you a better idea of who you're designing it for. And if you can put a picture to them, even better, because it gets it in your mind like who you're developing this for. It doesn't have to be a real person, but have an idea of the type of person that you always have in mind that you're designing it for. I don't know if any of you watch Project Runway, but they often talk about what the ideal girl they're designing these dresses or these outfits for, and they have to describe them before they go up on the runway and defend their designs. And so I think it's the same thing here. You want to come up with the persona of the ideal user. And then you want to set goals for your application, because later you want to be able to evaluate those goals. How many people do you feel like you want to use it, have using it, the type of usage that you want to see, and what your plans are for the app. So design thinking is something that you can do to help you understand your users a little bit better, and it's a process that I've used many times. It helps to get you to think empathetically about your users so that you can understand them. So you empathize, you talk to them, you learn from them. Then you start defining what you're going to do, and so you don't really want to even define it until you talk to people. A lot of times people are like, yes, I have this great idea for an app, and I've already come up with the idea and prototyped it before they've ever talked to somebody, and that might mean that they have really defined a problem that doesn't even exist. So after you talk to people, really empathize with them, define the problem in a very detailed way, then you would really want to ideate. You want to come up with a lot of different ideas for the solution to that problem, because there may not be just one idea. And you want to test out a lot of different ideas, maybe crazy ideas, and then maybe the final idea that you come up with is an amalgamation of those. I know when I've had students working on group projects, they'll come together with their individual ideas and then they'll bring them together, and they feel like the sum of the parts of the group is better than what any of the individual ideas were. Then you want to prototype, and you can prototype in different ways. I'll show you some examples in a minute. But you want to get something in the hands of users as quickly as possible without taking months and months and maybe years to develop the application. You want to get something in their hands that they can use now and give you feedback right away. And then you want to test. So this is sort of the design thinking process. You want to test at the end of the process. And really, you're kind of testing your ideas throughout as you're talking to people and showing them prototypes. But you definitely want to test and then maybe start over and go through the process again as you get feedback. So first of all, you want to sketch the design. This is often called a wireframe, and this is an easy kind of a prototype. You need paper, pencil, and you just sketch what it would look like. This is the most common way, and everyone does it, and I would say this is how Uber got started, and the Facebook app, and Twitter. I'm sure somebody sat down, Yelp, Netflix, somebody sat down with a pen and paper and started writing down what they think that this app should look like, what the different sections of it should be, and the types of content should be on it. So you want to address, how does the user log in? What's the first thing that she sees on the home screen? How does she see her different options to get around the site? Is there some sort of navigation? How do other screens need to be designed? And then what are the user interface features that need to be part of the app? What design features need to be created? Do you have to have images, logos, other types of graphics? And those things may need to be created in other programs, but you really can't decide that until you really start putting pencil to paper and deciding what you want your app to look like. And you may come up with lots of different wireframes so that you can get feedback from people on what they like the best. Then the next step is prototyping, and you can use a prototyping tool like Proto.io or Adobe XD to create your app design, but sometimes people just go even a little bit further with paper, as you can see on the right, where they created something that kind of looks like an app, and you're able to press it and it's a little bit 3D, and they've got some of the examples of the user interface items on it, so you can go ahead and get some feedback from people. I see all kinds of prototypes getting made with Post-its and colored paper and pipe cleaners, and a lot of times these design studios look like kindergarten classrooms. They use staples and tape, and they really want to create something that the user can feel like they can put in their hands and use, but yet it's something they could easily throw away if it doesn't work out. They're not spending a lot of time making it, and they haven't made a huge investment of money into it before they actually do invest the time and money and test the prototype with users. So, you can do one of these more advanced paper prototypes, and then you can move to something like Proto.io, and you can create all your different screens. And really, Proto.io and Adobe XD, they're both designed to create something that almost acts exactly like the actual app would. And there are things that help you transfer your prototypes into the application, but you really just need to design the application in the native environment for it, so that you can clearly upload it to the appropriate app store so that users can get access to it and it's designed properly and that you can troubleshoot it. So the next thing you would do is you design the app, and that's what we're going to do in the workshop on Saturday. So you'll learn a little bit more about the development environment. We're going to be doing iPhone app development, but obviously you have to decide on the platform when you're going to do it. Most people would do both, but you can't do both at one time with the same person. And you begin to create the functionality and include the design elements. You also, if you're going to be using data, you have to design and decide how the data will be used and stored to work with the program. Things like the Amazon app. How will the inventory and the orders data be stored? That doesn't get stored on your phone. It gets stored on a database somewhere in the cloud. So there's just a lot of things that you have to think about when you start designing an app. So then when you're done, the thing with applications is you have to upload them to some sort of a store before the users can download them, which is very different than a website, which you just transfer it, file transfer protocol, FTP, to a web server, and it's available. It's easy to make changes and updates. With a native application, either iPhone app or an Android app, you have to upload it to their store. And I know that Apple has some pretty strict requirements, and they have rejected applications from their store. So if you spend all this time on something and it eventually gets rejected, that's also kind of bad. So you want to kind of know what their requirements are, and you want to have a quick turnaround from the App Store and getting your program uploaded and approved. And then you have to start marketing it. You have to get people to download it. And there are tons of apps out there, and lots of them people don't use. You probably have apps on your phone you downloaded once and never used again. So it's a very, very competitive environment. So the general process with this is that you would seek feedback and continued iteration throughout the process. You would go through the steps that we did: design, develop, test, release, feedback, and then you might do it again and again. And I think you probably know that because you have to update your apps all the time. So they are going through getting continuous feedback and continued iteration every time they go through one of these, what they would probably call a sprint, as part of the agile methodology of development. You don't start at the beginning, take a long time to develop something, and then finally at the end something comes out. You're doing continued iteration. You start with a minimum viable product, so you get something out the door, and then you just continue adding features, adding functionality. We have seen constant changes and updates to Facebook over the years. Sometimes it's subtle, like, oh, suddenly the font's changed. Sometimes there's a whole new feature. Sometimes things go away that we like. And we're kind of used to that now, that there's constant change and iteration. And as long as it doesn't really mess us up, prevent us from using the application the way we've been used to using it. I think people are okay with that, and I think many of the app developers have learned, in some cases the hard way, what types of things a user would feel comfortable with in each iteration.